Darling in the FranXX. I'm about a year too late to talk about it, but considering it's the anniversary of when it ended, I thought, what better way to celebrate than by overanalyzing the hell out of my favorite aspect of the series. I'm always seeing someone talk about this anime, probably even more so than I originally did a year ago as more people stumble upon it. The community has always been so split on it because of how it ends, and it's not surprising because of how hard the series stays true to its themes that are a constant part of it. I feel Darling in the FranXX is one of the few animes that I've ever watched that I can call thematically perfect. The constant themes that this anime has a focus on are imperfection, companionship, individuality, and sacrifice. I'm gonna talk all about the relationship symbolism that this series has, and how the interpersonal relationships mesh together to lead towards the end, and some other things past that. I'll be talking about symbolism, but this doesn't mean it's anything that's deep. All this stuff is really blatantly shoved in your face, with the deepest things just being these relationships. Hell, the most blatant symbolism this series has is that FranXX's writing represents sex, and when you put it along with the personalities and how the characters treat one another, you end up getting some top tier enjoyment if you like that sort of character writing. From this point onward, I'll be talking about the series through my interpretations of the shallow and blatant symbolisms, as well as some of the developments that happens through them. But first, buckle up. There will be heavy spoilers ahead. Hiro, our main character, represents a man stuck in a rut in his life. He's effectively impotent because he doesn't have any greater feelings for the girls that he's been with, and he beats himself up all the time because he thinks of himself as a lesser man because of it. He can't pilot a FranXX, and spends most of his time using a training unit, longing to have the enjoyment of riding with his very own partner. This all changes when 02 comes into his life and turns his world upside down. Her promiscuity intrigues him, and so he starts to pursue her, thinking that she'd fill the void in his being that life has left him. When he rides with her for the very first time, he starts to feel that excitement like he finally belongs. The more Hiro rides with 02 though, the more he finds himself being affected by her. Around the second time, he gets his dino STD, and the people that find out get worried and angry at him for having no care for his own life, since they thought that this would eventually lead to his death. Hiro didn't care though. Hiro just wanted to have this form of happiness and would throw away everything in order to keep being able to feel like this, even if it caused him to hurt the people around him with his selfishness. His relationship with 02 was incredibly toxic, up until it's revealed that Hiro was 02's original darling that was erased from both of their memories. After learning this, 02 started being a lot more gentle and loving towards Hiro, and it evolves from this abusive to caring relationship, and 02 started showing a side of herself that she'd never shown anyone. Up until this point in the series, 02 was always intimidating towards the rest of the cast, and even Hiro was slightly off-put by her. She just saw Hiro and the people around him as expendable and unimportant to her, and she couldn't care less if they died. This sudden change in her is where the fanbase started saying that she was out of character, which isn't the case when this was so carefully crafted all for this moment in the series. Someone who has seen another person in the light of saving their life can end up acting irrationally, especially when that sort of thing is connected to someone that they love. It's incredibly unhealthy in some cases, but it's not some sort of ass pull that destroys the uniqueness of a character. From the moment the series started, she was looking for her darling, taking anyone that she could use to replace that person she was looking for, because she felt that she'd never be able to meet him again. She wanted everyone she was with to become that person that she longed for, and would be incredibly disappointed when they weren't able to fill those shoes. When Hiro enters the scene, she accepts him as being worthy because he could exist beside her. When she discovers that he was exactly who she was looking for, it's perfectly believable that she would change so much, because it's what she's dreamed of for years, especially when you consider that she feels that she almost killed the one person in the entire world that she loves. Hiro and 02's relationship parallels the Japanese tale of the red and blue ogres, and it adds even more to the anime's themes of sacrifice and companionship, even tying into imperfection as well, only with the story shaping into its very own twist for the tale. Hiro is the blue ogre who, time and time again, sacrifices his being to make the red ogre get the happiness that they want. 02 is the red ogre who wants to be loved and desires freedom, but is only met with contempt and fear because in the eyes of the humans, she is a monster. The relationship heavy-handedly takes on this tale to showcase that all the pair really needed all along was just each other. The story in this series about the Beast and the Prince directly parallels this, but the roles are slightly different. Darling in the FranXX's ending, however, breaks away from both stories to give a true ending to our main characters, even if it was a sad or bittersweet one for their friends. Ichigo has a large hand in the series, being a really prominent part of the show and representing the childhood friend with unrequited love. Throughout the series, she stands opposing Hiro's relationship with 02, and only ever cares about how she feels. Because of this, she's a character that you can find yourself hating really easily, because she only wants Hiro to make herself happy, and doesn't care that he'd be miserable with her. She revels in keeping Hiro away from 02, and feels good about herself for it. After the halfway point, Ichigo is dead set on being a thorn in both Hiro and 02's side. That point is where the brunt of her true character shows up, and it shows just how wonderfully written as a terrible person she is. She has good intentions to some degree, but it's mostly her being vindictive disguised as something that's good. Ichigo even becomes the ringleader and convinces the other parasites to keep Hiro away from 02 because of her own jealousy. Her self-importance, like Hiro's, hurts people around her, but on a much smaller scale. Goro is so supportive of her and her love for Hiro, and tries to help her out with that throughout the series despite how much he loves her too. Ichigo's relationship with Goro is very one-sided because of how much Ichigo ignores Goro in favor for Hiro, and it causes the sync within the FranXX to fail frequently because she's unable to get over Hiro enjoying his own life. Towards the end of the series, she lightens up in her character and does get a lot better, but it feels so false and disingenuous compared to what we went through previously. Goro is an interesting case, to say the least. He's somewhat frustrated by how Hiro doesn't treat himself better because he's afraid of Hiro hurting Ichigo. Throughout the series, he goes through great lengths to make sure that he can take care of the one that he loves, even to the degree that Hiro would go to if he were in his shoes. It showcases how much Goro wants to be like our main character, so Ichigo would look at him like she does Hiro. He does tend to make some of the scenes involving him, Ichigo, and Hiro a bit weird though, because throughout the series he practically wants to give her away to Hiro. With some minor deviations here and there in his personality, Goro pretty much stays the exact same throughout the series. Mitsuru takes a greater part in the series in correlation to Hiro, and is also probably the second most interesting of the entire cast. When the series starts, he's always smug and looking down on Hiro, but when 02 enters the scene, he starts trying to validate himself by thinking that he can do everything Hiro can do, but better. This is shown very blatantly when he rides with 02, but the mental and physical stress that riding with her causes him to start beating himself up for once. He keeps affirming to himself that he's better than Hiro, and it progressively gets worse until he gets a new partner. During this brooding time of his, he comes across Kokoro, and they eventually introduce Futoshi to the world of cuckoldry. Kokoro leans on to Mitsuru, seemingly because they share a secret between each other, and she wants to lighten his mood, and Mitsuru confides in her since she listens to his problems that he has about his insecurities and his inferiority complex towards Hiro. The really interesting thing about Mitsuru is that he has several ways you can interpret what he symbolizes because it changes as the series goes on. From the first half of the series, it suggests that he's a closeted gay person because of how he reacts in correlation to Hiro, especially when you find out about his past in episode 11. The constant frustration he feels is him hating that he used to admire Hiro and look up to him, and regrets even wanting to be Hiro's FranXX partner. His previous actions within the series support how I interpret this because it reflects jealousy rather than simply just an inferiority complex. Mitsuru wants to be acknowledged, but the acknowledgement that will make him happy can only come from Hiro in his own mind. Ikuno, Mitsuru's original partner, knows this flaw in Mitsuru and tries to point it out, but all it really does is just make him angry because he doesn't want to realize that all he's really doing is trying to get Hiro to take notice of him. Ikuno was never really a good match for Mitsuru though, since she's not really invested in him, and having her partner interested in another man just complicates their connection. When it shifts to Mitsuru being the partner of Kokoro, the symbolism goes from closeted gay to leaning towards Mitsuru being more bi-curious than anything. Kokoro is there to help Mitsuru get out of this mindset that he's in, and eventually he falls in love with her. While it also touts the ideal that it's okay to be yourself for Mitsuru, it also serves as a way to bring some amazing character development through these actions. Futoshi, on the other hand, gets the short end of the stick for the entirety of the anime. Both in writing and what he represents, he never gets a break. He gets practically no development throughout the series, and what little he does is from him forcing himself to be happy to see the person that he loves being with someone else. Futoshi starts off fairly happy and really enjoyed his time being the partner of Kokoro, but as she develops her interest in Mitsuru, everything comes crashing down for him. His love for Kokoro comes on pretty strong, and that's the only reason I can feel for why she even did the partner shuffle. That feeling of betrayal that you see happen for Futoshi just makes you want to see him happy again, but it's the only part in the series that I feel was so poorly handled, especially since he was effectively forced to live with this betrayal of someone that he put so much trust in beforehand. The rest of the series has Futoshi trying to better himself to fix those insecurities of his, which I feel happens a little too late. Up until that point, everything that happens to him feels out of place. Even after everything is settled, it still feels wrong, because Futoshi turns into this role towards Mitsuru and Kokoro that feels familial, almost paternal in nature. It's really forced. The last partnership is the least memorable of the bunch because out of all the other relationships, they're the most normal comparatively. Zotome isn't the nicest to his partner, but as he progresses through the episodes, he starts being a lot nicer towards Miku. Through the early episodes, he's cocky and is a bit of a handful for his lighthearted partner, but when the parasites get to visit the very people that they've been protecting, it ends up sparking a change in Zotome and how he acts towards Miku. Zotome still acts like he does with Miku, but it doesn't happen nearly as often as he's learned to appreciate what he has because the adults that they've been protecting don't have the liberty and emotional freedom that they do. Along with representing innocence, Zotome's character is mostly used to point out the system that the parasites live in, and how, out of the rest of them, he's the most trusting of their leaders. The series builds him up just to show him slowly lose faith in them as it goes on. It serves a really good part for when Ape eventually betrays that trust that the series was building up for the kids, which leads us up to where all of what I've been talking about comes together for the climax of the series. The ending is one of the more criticized endings to an anime that I've heard of in recent years. A lot of people say that it just comes out of nowhere, and that the shift in 02's character makes no sense, like I said previously. You see, the series only ever foreshadows that Papa and the system that they live in is bad, and it's first shown really early in the anime with how the kids are treated as less than people. It's a really slow build up, and you start questioning really early on if Ape are truly the bad guys, and more evidence piles up as the series goes along. It's probably clear to you that they are the enemy around episode 10, where Zotome first gets the seed of doubt placed into him. From there, it just snowballs up until the reveal in episode 20. It's not a very surprising twist, and it's not even surprising that the Klaxosaur princess puts her trust in the hero and 02 either. While he still may be partially human, Hiro understood the pain of the Klaxosapiens to some extent through the experiences that Verm had put him through with 02, and that's where I feel their understanding came from. The main themes of the series shine their brightest through the climax. Countless sacrifices happen to attain individuality. At this point in the series, the main characters fight to keep their imperfections, a pretty common theme that happens in any anime where characters are threatened by assimilation. It all culminates in the end to keep true to its themes and carry them all the way to completion. The final episodes of the series are no doubt poorly written in places and can feel odd at times, especially with some parts in the last episode. but I still feel this series is perfect even with how imperfect it's written. This series' charm isn't something that I feel could be reproduced. Even if it is imperfect, it's incredibly enjoyable. It's a love letter to the genre, and it pays homage to many past series along the way, all while being its own thing. It's truly an enjoyable experience that should be watched at least once, even if it's just for a single episode. Just don't force yourself. I understand how hard it could be to watch because of some of the awkward writing.